What the audio synthesizer does to a speaker, a video synthesizer does to a television. And these are some images I've made and photographed. The way old televisions worked is that they shot a beam of light out the front, scanning each pixel thousands of times a second. So in order to create shapes on the screen, we use an oscillators in sync with the frame rate of the television. When the oscillator is slow, you get horizontal lines. Whenever you speed the oscillator up, you get vertical lines. But in between there, in between vertical and horizontal, there's a lot of variation in horizontal lines. The higher your frequency, the more lines, and with frequency modulation, you can cause wave effects. And depending on the shape of the oscillator, you'll get different shaped lines. Because all it is controlling the voltage input of the brightness of the screen or the color of each pixel. And so we're just modulating the television. Whenever you combine horizontal and vertical lines together, you create shapes. Sine waves will create circles, square waves will create squares, saw waves will get triangle shapes, and combining them together in different patterns has a wide variety of effects. This is the LZX Vidiot. It's the first video synthesizer I ever purchased, and it can create all of the effects we've seen so far, and many more. Such as the ones in this video here. Whenever you use a full photographic image as a modulation source for video synthesis, you can use the brightness levels of that image to cause many different effects, such as changing the color of different brightnesses.
Boom, 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 boom.
This video here was created quite recently using a Vidiot and an LZX Industries setup. And what you're seeing here is multiple effects, multiple layers of video happening at once. It looks like he's using a memory palace and a Vidiot combined together. But those lines are the vertical oscillator, and he's using the image of the actor here to modulate the vertical lines of the oscillator, contouring it to the shape of the brightness around his body. Whenever the lines go outwards, that's feedback. Now in audio, feedback can often be quite undesirable, but in video, if controlled properly, it looks really cool. He's controlling the feedback, letting it grow a bit and cutting it off. And of course, you could achieve this sort of effect by routing the end of the signal back in towards the beginning of the chain, or simply pointing a camera at a screen that's displaying your synthesis and then running that back into the system. Now here we have an earlier example with Earth, Wind, and Fire, and they're using quite a bit of feedback coming off of their bodies there. But the feedback is also modulating the hue and the saturation, causing those rainbow effects. And there you see some oscillators going outwards with a mirroring effect. And then they're using the images of their bodies to modulate the hue. Now, when we talk about hue, we mean the color. When we talk about saturation, we mean the quality of the color, how intense it is. And then we'll just talk about luma, or brightness. And these sorts of effects were used even into the 90s here with De La Soul. Although I have a suspicion that what we're seeing here isn't actually video synthesis, but just imitating it. Though they are using a key video effect, just keying, separating parts of an image out from the rest of it. Everyone's familiar with the technique of green screening. But in analog video synthesis, normally it's accomplished by one of two different means, which is either a comparative key or a linear amplitude key. Now, with a comparative key, if you've heard of a luma key, where only brighter objects will be shown and darker objects will not be shown, you accomplish that by using a logic module. So you'll set a level of voltage, brightness, amplitude that you want. And essentially you're creating a gate. And only things that are brighter than the value of that luma signal will be displayed. And so by using that logic module, you can create a key that only allows the brightest parts of the image through. Now, a amplitude or linear key takes advantage of the system, where in video synthesis, we use 0 to 1 volt scale for everything. Eurorack modular synthesis uses 0 to 5 volts, just for reference. There are modules that allow them to work together by using a voltage multiplier divider to get to the proper levels. And you see talking heads here with a conglomerate of different oscillators forming a wave pattern. Looks like there's some feedback going on there as well. And then keying themselves over it. But with the amplitude key, what you do is mix one signal into another until you move the voltage out of the registered range. You cause clipping within the video signal. And that causes that spot not to display, at which point you can put another image underneath it. This right here is an oscilloscope, and someone's running a XY pattern video into it. So you take a video and you break it down to its brightness levels, horizontal and vertical, and an oscillator. Oscilloscope has two oscillators in it, one for vertical and one for horizontal in its XY coordinate mode. And you can take video signals and have them displayed inside an oscilloscope, which looks really cool. So now I'm going to show you a few videos that give historical and artistic context to video synthesis. I'll upload a separate video that has everyone's assignments this week. There are some really cool projects.
In the 50s, we were force-fed on the American dream. We had backyards and cars and the single-family unit. We danced close and went steady. We were romantic.
Angel baby, my angel baby, when you are near me.
In the 60s, our generation gapped. Emotion moved up the spine, becoming spiritual. Kennedy was dead, we were at war, so many of us pushed away and got up for a grander view. It was a grand hallucination, but a real social transformation, and San Francisco was at the center of it. We dropped acid and saw God and cosmic order, and I was drawn to the idea of expressing this vision on film. For a year, I made film loops for all the local light shows. They played at hundreds of weekend concerts around the country, and the images became icons of the time. They began to define our generation. In 1967, Glenn McKay, the Liquid's master of the headlights, and Mike McNamee, a very talented video experimenter, and I all gathered at a small TV station for a midnight video jam. Glenn's light show liquids and my film loops were mixed through a video effects bank, and then they were rephotographed by Mike off of the studio monitor. This became the raw material for Off On, a sampler of the visual journal I was keeping of our subcultural subconscious. Tom DeWitt, who had supplied many of the original film loops, and Manny Meyer, an electronic sound composer, helped me build the soundtrack, and the film was released in 1967, while the vision was still growing. Winter, 1980. I'm teaching a class in a television studio at UCLA. Working with the original elements of a film I made in 1967 called Off On, and light show film loops, and a dance performance to be taped in our studio, my students and I are going to make a new video mix of our source images. We are producing this film in the class to document our studio work.
Tell us any two. Are you ready? Roll.
Sun turning round with graceful motion. We're setting off with soft explosion. Bound for a star fiery ocean. It's so very lonely. You're 100 lives.
Okay, camera 3, stand by. We're going to do a cross-dissolve view on my count. 4, 3, 2, 1. Cue, Scott.
This camera is seeing its own image, and it's being multiplied like reverberation, sound reverberation, indefinitely into an infinity. We are shooting me with one camera, feeding that camera in and into this loop. As I'm making pictures for communication, I find that I'm creating new words in the process. But before you can create a new image language, it's necessary to know the basics, the shop talk.
Fade in.
De-beaming, mirror multiplication, dissolve,
These are some of the special effects we'll be using in the Off On remix.
hot H wipe,
They are standard effects built into the consoles of most television stations.
frequency modulated wipe,
In a live video mixing situation,
Image feedback.
this is the language you need to talk tech.
Display.
Offset registration, negative polarization, amplitude modulated wipe,
Chroma sweep.
hue sweep,
Luminance keying. Wipe positioning.
Once you've learned the basic terms,
Fade out.
you can create the language you need to express your personal vision and design new phrases with the components of image and sound.
Metaphorically, structural, nonlinear fashion, concentric, viscerally, indirectly, tactile, that is, cinematically, telepathic, chemically, subtle, primarily multidimensional. Time wraps back on itself. Image disappears as a cloud of paradox, inevitably photographic, uniquely exotic, simultaneously cathedral-like, brightly, still shiny, but thinner.
My earliest experiments in film often involve refilming a manipulated video image. I often designed and constructed my own rephotographic tools. One way we manipulated images in the class was to rephotograph them from a mylar surface. And it's rephotographic, except of course this is like a very liquidy reflection. I've always relied on low-budget ingenuity rather than expensive tools to produce the images I want to put on the screen. This mirror box works like a kaleidoscope. It splits the image into 6 compartments. And if we can cut to camera 3, the essence of my experimental work in film and video is based partly on the understanding of photographic principles and partly on a sensitivity to the materials available in my immediate environment. I've even used insects as photographic subjects. Not a stone is left unturned.
I found the centipede crawling under a rock, took him home, put him on a light plate. The centipede, as it shows up in Off On, is actually the same centipede printed over itself sideways, and then those two flipped upside down. 4 centipedes crawling in a kind of Gordian knot. Some of those bugs did die. It was just too hot for them, and I'm not proud of that. I don't feel good about that at all. At least they were immortalized.
Right here, we can start seeing the reiterative edges as they're going out.
My films have a strong sense of the graphic. forms and textures, balance, depth.
Because our switcher can't accommodate several sources, we're going to be making multiple passes. We'll be taking a feed from a live camera, so we've brought in dancers as a figure source to be combined with certain backgrounds which have been made into film loops.
Okay, here we come. Music.
The class ran 16 evenings. We mixed down about 6 times. In other words, we would combine 2 images, 2 sources, and then mix that combination with another source, and that process went through 6 layers, 6 generations.
Okay, both loops loaded. All right, roll projector number 1. 4, 3, 2, 1. Fade up projector number 1. Okay, stand by projector number 2. Okay, projector number 2. 4, 3, 2, 1. Dissolve. Good.
Film is a technology that's been with us for 100 years or so, and it's chemical and mechanical. Video is bringing in a slightly different element, which is electronics. I'm fascinated by technological leaps and the way technology influences art, and the way art in turn leads science and technology, and in fact even whole societies and cultures. These things tend to come out of me in a very intuitive way. The resultant image is either appealing or not appealing. It either fits or doesn't fit with another image. Finally, for me, video becomes a paint on the palette, along with any of the other techniques or textures that can be put onto the canvas of film.
Okay. That was better?
Are you listening, Scott?
Yeah, I'm listening now.
Well, parts were better, parts of it
was worse.
There you go.
It was worse?
We got the Synths who sections of it were really good, and other sections were really.
Well, why was it worse? Because this time I just charged on.
Well, sort of. I was.
Because before
the thing was sort of in charge. It was a different pace, and the thing kind of got caught. And you were calling cameras right when I was calling cameras, and so Brian just sort of went there and went.
Oh, I see.
And there was sort of little bits of confusion here and there. My suggestion is, I think between the two, you probably have enough to cut together something good. But you want to go ahead and do. The last option is to do one last take if you want.
No.
Okay, we won't.
There you go with whatever we got.
One of the life-changing events for me was in high school. They were building a media center, and I walked past this door, and there was all this equipment, and a guy looked at some blueprints, scratching his head, and I couldn't stay away. I said, "What's going on in here?" He said, "This is going to be a TV studio. You want to help me put it together?" That was where I got the bug. I've been involved with video ever since. My name is David Sieg. We're here in Fletcher, North Carolina at ZFX with my ancient Scanimate machine. The primary thing the Scanimate did that nobody could do before was easily move words. So really it was the beginning of motion graphics. From about 75 to 85. If you saw moving animation on TV, it was either shot frame at a time on film, which took forever, or it came out of one of the 10 Scanimate machines that was ever built. NBC Sports, ABC Sports, CBS Evening News. We had a scene in the first Star Wars. It was everywhere. This is the Scanimate room. Whew. It's gotten hot in here. These are the only two that I know of that work. I have the first R&D machine and I have the last one ever produced. It's just got a very distinct look that can't be replicated. It's sort of the visual equivalent of like a Moog synthesizer. With analog, it's a continuously variable thing that you can adjust. When it's in the initial position, I'm gonna put an oscillator on depth. One of the nice things about the Scanimate is that as you adjust something, as you turn the knob, you immediately see it. It's just continuous. That's analog. You plug in things to make your animation. I mean, that's really where the term plug-in came from. It's very tangible. You can affect the image with your hands. I mean, you can almost touch it. You can't touch any of this digital stuff. It's in the computer somewhere. With the Scanimate, you're literally photographing light that's coming off a phosphor screen. This is a very abbreviated version of the animator's cheat book. For example, if you've got a logo and you want it pushed back in perspective, you have a horizontal ramp to a semi-amp with a bias pot, multiply them together into a gain pot, and feed that to final section vertical. So these are fairly simple effects. Oh, that's those NASA machines. That's what's recorded on this tape. I'm gonna have to get that working. When everybody went to high def, they literally threw all of this stuff out. We're in a throwaway society. Your iPhone quits working, you go get another one and throw the old one away. But this stuff was made to be fixed. It doesn't matter what the machine is. If there's a guy that has been responsible for maintaining and keeping the machine working for years and years, he hates to see that machine go into a landfill. I could give it to the computer museum tomorrow, but the fact that it's working to me is the value of it. I don't really want to just have it be a static display somewhere. You listen to an old album, it takes you back. And I think this kind of animation, this kind of look, sort of takes you back to that era. I don't care that much about moving words. The thing that's fun with the Scanimate to me is to plug oscillators in and have these patterns that are just endless. There's not anything like it. I guess, some people would say I'm crazy and it'll never amount to anything, but it's been worth it to me.
My name is Denise Gallant, and this is the Synopsys video synthesizer. The original circuits in the system were designed between 1974 and 78 by Rob Schaefer, initially at UCSC, under the guide of Gordon Muma and the Electronic Music Studio. We experimented with manipulating video signals by mixing Moog oscillator signals with video during live music video concerts at UCSC.
And so I said, don't track the TV viewer fades in and out.
Atom after atom breaking down into something new.
Like dreams I've had lately. I can't really imagine them happening. Dreaming a painting and then walking inside the painting.
Many of our concepts of video art were experiments in how to integrate audio and video into synesthesia-like experiments, which became a central and unique component of the video synthesizer. Rob also created a circuit to allow audio to trigger or mix video between a live signal and tape, editing video to sound in real time. Another core component of the video synthesizer was the colorizer. We worked primarily with black and white cameras at that time, so Rob designed a video colorizer as the heart of the system. What is unique about the colorizer is that it produced 720 degrees of color, rather than a standard 360 degrees of color, which allows rainbow-like hues to be added to the video signal. Another unique, non-traditional module was the concept of an 8-channel luminance keyer. If we plug a video signal into the keyer, the light level can cut off segments of the video. The light areas are one channel and the dark areas are another channel, with layers of gray channels in between. On each of these channels, I can adjust the luminance, saturation, or hue, rather than the typical RGB, which is much more difficult to control in live situations, and typical of all other video synths. So here's the colorizer, and then it's being controlled by this 8-level keyer. So I'm actually adding in the luminance, the saturation, and the hue. What's unique about this colorizer is about 10 things, and one of them is just that you control luminance, saturation, and hue rather than RGB, which was something I really wanted to do because I wanted to run this in live concert situations where I have music coming in, affecting the graphics. At any point, I could just flip a switch and go over to blue, and I'm okay, because blue always looks good. I could plug in multiple inputs into each channel, mixing real video signals and oscillator patterns. We can also invert the luminance, saturation, and hue of each channel. You can also plug the oscillators into the video input and have the oscillators cut the key levels. In this case, I have a triangle waveform as the key input, where I can set 8 separate channels of video. What I have here is this oscillator, which is actually a triangle oscillator, like that, cutting off the different layers of the key. I could probably get all 8 of these if I finally tune them. One of our goals was to be able to run the video in live concert settings, so the 8-level keyer included small LED lights to show which channels are active. Rob also created a variety of high-frequency oscillators that were built into the system, which could be locked to video frequency. The horizontal and vertical triangle, square, or circular or parabola oscillators could be added together in a variety of patterns. The audio control comes from our only third-party module in the system. A gentle electric pitch follower allows the pitch or amplitude of the audio to voltage control modulate any input on the synthesizer, such as patterns, color, or luminance. Now the other thing that's unique about it is that it's voltage controllable. So I could have the video, the patterns, the oscillators, or music with a pitch follower control anything on this system. And so this is the first time a pitch follower has been built into a video synthesizer. When we were building the system in Berkeley and San Francisco in 1978 and 79, we were also testing the system in local clubs in San Francisco, Berkeley, and Santa Cruz. The clubs were always dark, and only 2 levels could be used with the low luminance 2 black and white cameras of that time. I was also editing at NBC LA in 1977 and 78. In 1980, I came back to LA with the video synth with the hope of getting work in special effects and in those pre-MTV early years of music videos. Boom, 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 boom. The budgets for music videos were huge for well-known bands, but nearly non-existent for upcoming bands in Los Angeles. It was the early experimental new wave bands that seemed to appreciate the video synth most, along with avant-garde producers such as Kim Fowley and Renee Dalder.
We now can finally begin to enjoy the fruits of our age-long, painful labors.
I was also the first VJ in Los Angeles creating live video in a number of popular clubs. However, it was the movie industry that paid our rent. We created effects for several movies, including the infamous Brainstorm with Natalie Wood and Christopher Walken. One of Rob's later modules that was added to our system in 1981 was a 4-level keyer mixer, creating unique extra soft keys between 4 video signals. This new soft look also worked well with the growing new age music market. We were contacted with early new age music artists such as Steve Roach and Richard Bermer, and later with the popular German new age group Tangerine Dream. I was also introduced to Brian Samuels, a laser artist who became a 3-year partner. Brian's ARP audio synthesizer was used to create gorgeous laser-like patterns on a medical oscilloscope, which I then captured with the black and white camera, adding patterns, colors, and video channels to the signal. One of the results of this collaboration was a 16-song video compilation called Watercolors, which won a 1986 Billboard Music Award.
Inside the august marble walls of the Kennedy Center, there's some strange goings-on today. The beginning of a 5-day video festival. Take a look. Do not adjust your TV set. There is nothing wrong. This is just one aspect of the brave new world called video.
I also won an AFI grant during those years, creating a children's pilot wrapping the video effects around a story. In 1985 and 86, I joined the high-end video effects studio Image West, which had the very early Scanimate analog computer. Along with our other high-end commercial work at Image West, I was able to stay late at night, creating similar laser-like patterns for my own video art projects. In 1986, I came back to Santa Cruz and married Kevin Monahan, who is also from the high-tech audio industry and had been at EMU Systems for 20 years. While I worked on the more technical side with companies such as Chiron, Discrete Logic, and SGI, we continued with our video art projects, including the first special effects CD-ROM, which we called Nightclub Earth. We still create video art, often integrating the Synopsys video synth effects for dance, sculpture, Las Vegas stage shows, music video art,
This is dedicated to the one I love.
backgrounds for music theater, and video for large screen projections such as the yearly NAMM Tech Awards show in Anaheim. And as you see here, after over 35 years, the video synth is still working, as recently demonstrated at a showing in San Francisco.
Go. Sweet! That is a lot of fun.
Hello.
So we can change the colors?
Yeah.
This is so cool.
Rob, who has worked as an engineer with CBS for the past 30 years, has also recently created a new HD video synth for the next generation of video artists.
It's now covered.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this quick look into video synthesis. And if you're interested in taking a look at it or trying it out, we have the Lumen software down in room 9A in the New Media Center, or you should look up LZX Industries. They are the company who is bringing this technology back and creating it in the Eurorack format.